Okay.
It's ready, he says.
Okay, hello from Brussels! Okay. Welcome back. Please do take your seats as quickly as possible. So, a very warm welcome back to those of you who are watching us by live web stream. As you can see, we've just had a photograph with Viviane Reding, and we are now going to move to the discussion. So, if you could take your seats as quickly as possible. Just a reminder before we start that if you are watching by live web stream and you want to join the discussion, remember to use the Twitter hashtag EWMD 2014. So the title of our dinner debate is Diversity Beyond Quota. What else does it take to be more successful with cultural changes in the future? So put very simply, we heard during the award ceremony about the things that Viviane Reding has been doing, most notably mention of that proposal to have legislation to get 40% of women on non-executive boards by 2020. What we want to talk about now is, okay, that's great, but where do we go from here? How do you address the cultural challenge that it poses? Because, as Viviane Reding said earlier, that is the most difficult problem. So, if I could ask you first now, Viviane, you talked earlier about the achievements and how, as you said, in the last couple of years, putting this on the table, there has been that skyrocket, as you put it. But where do we go from here? Because it's not just about a piece of legislation, is it? You have to do more. You have to build on that. The big question, and I'd like to ask you first and then come out to everybody else. Where do we go next? What are the next steps?
Well, I think we are only at the beginning of this because we have managed to put the question on the agenda. But the problem is far from being solved because you do not solve a problem with the law. The law has to go into the minds of the people. It has to go into the behavior of the people. And very often laws just stay on paper. So this law was meant in order to, as a wake-up call, and as an instrument to break through the glass ceiling. But breaking through the glass ceiling, the women have to do it by themselves. The law is an instrument, but it is not doing it for the women themselves. They have to get it done. And my deep belief is that women can only manage to get this done together with men.
Okay, we'll come back on all of that, but I want to get a few views from all of you on that. I'm going to start here and then I will come to you, but Siglina Schneider, just a word from you. The law doesn't solve the problem. This is the start. Do you agree? And if you do, where do we go from here?
I agree absolutely, and I think we have to discuss about possibilities, and I would like to make a question out of that. We have to communicate about this. We have to make this cultural change, this mind change, which is something very, very hard to do. And we heard from you, Viviane Reding, that you did for years hard work to convince people. And we also know that you are very good in communicating and addressing key messages to people. And we also heard that you said, as a politician, you also have to be a manager. So could you give us some lessons you learned how to communicate and how to integrate others in a changing process, which will be now very, very important for all of us. If you have the quota or not, it will help us. I'm convinced that it will really be something not nice, but necessary, and that this gives all of us a good frame to say we have to do, but now how do we have to do and what can we make out of that?
I will let you answer that question in a little while, but I just want to get a few comments and questions first before we do. So that crucial question of how to communicate. Could I ask you, just because most people know each other, but not everyone, to introduce yourself before you make your comment or put your question?
Yes, I'm Angelika Pottmögele. I'm an EWMD member for many, many years, and I work here in Brussels for the European umbrella organization that represents local and regional government. And our our organization introduced a quota a couple of years ago, and this was introduced by male leadership and on the pressure of our Nordic countries. And now, for the first time in our 60 years, more than 60 years history, we have 46% of women in our political bodies, and we have a woman president. And I can tell you that makes a big difference. And even the men realize how good it is. It makes our debates much more lively. It makes the questions much more closer to the needs of the people. So I would say the character and the nature of our debates, of our political debates, have changed so much that nobody now would go back to the system that we had before. And I just had this week the possibility to speak to two German local politicians, one mayor and one member of a regional parliament. And they both said, if we don't get quotas, things don't change. So I think, at least for the political representation, quotas are absolutely positive and really bring us very positive results.
Thank you. But that really was the key, that you didn't have to follow up with other things. Once you had the quotas and the balance improved,
exactly,
everything built from it.
And everybody, even the men, realized how good it is, how much more interesting it is, what the positive impact is of having 50% of women sharing the power. And everybody, as I said, nobody would like to go back to the system we had before.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's quotas and done on a voluntary basis. Other thoughts on where you go once you have the legislation? Yes, please.
I'm Simone Lang, and I'm a member of EWMD in Frankfurt, in Germany. If sometimes laws that have been set up to protect people or to promote people lead to some vice versa effect, namely that institutions or the society is even fighting more or harder to get around them. And I would like to know whether you share that thought.
So you mean it can be counterproductive because it creates a backlash. Do you have a feeling that that backlash is happening, or you just fear that it might? You fear it might. Any other comments before I come back to Ms. Reding, just to respond to those first points? Okay, let's get an answer on those, Viviane, and then we can build on it from there. So the communication issue, you're a communications expert.
Well, yes, in order to survive in a political world, you have to communicate. I learned this rather as a small girl already. When I was a small girl, small girls were supposed to behave, to sit kindly and beautifully in a corner and to play with puppets. Now, I was doing neither the first one, nor the second, nor the third one, and I was the only one of the small girls who have become big girls today who managed to do a career. What does this show to you? Good girls go to heaven. All right. Yeah. And that is also about communication. If you do things and nobody knows, it is as if you wouldn't do things. So sometimes you have to rock the boat in order to arrive to a change. If you do that, of course, you are controversial. And if you are controversial, you have the ones who think you are wonderful and the other ones who think you are a witch. But this is what you have. From this contradiction, you really can change the system. My experience, and going from an old system to a new system, and I did that together with my party, a very conservative party, Christian Democrat Party in Luxembourg. I mean, that was all about older, grey-suited men. Well, we imposed quotas, and the party has changed ever since. And today, I mean, they have forgotten that there are the quotas. They are just looking for female talent in the villages, in the city, everywhere. So the quota is for me an instrument to break through. It is certainly not something to stay, but it is something to rock the boat and to make people think about it. And in the end, yes, in the end, as you said, for the regional experience, in the end, people then will say that, yes, but it has always been like that, hasn't it been? A share of competence. Women look at things differently than a man, and both together is a solution to very many problems.
But does that mean, because in their experience, the quotas alone did it, whereas you were saying the legislation is only the first point and this is the start of a process. So have they been lucky that simply introducing the quotas has worked so well that everyone is now saying that's great and we'll never go back? Or do you think of themselves they can drive that process? I got the impression you felt there was much more to do.
Yeah, let me come back to this Luxembourgian experience, because it's a very concrete one. So in the early 19th, one party, a very conservative party, goes for quotas inside the structures of the party. Today, the new government proposes a law that you have to have 40% of women as candidates standing for elections, which of course creates a very big upheaval, you can think. But you see, 30 years later, the necessity to make a law comes up because it is not possible otherwise. Sometimes you need very radical means in order to start to change behavior. Once the behavior has started to change, you can abolish the means. You don't need them anymore. The best example is one of the regional institutions of the European Union. But if you don't do anything, I'm sorry to say we need 100 years more. Huh?
And that question about the risk that this sort of legislation can provoke a backlash?
Look, it is not just a simple legislation in economic terms. It is a legislation which goes very deeply into societal beliefs. And it is the societal beliefs which are the most difficult to change. Women belong to the house and to raising children, and men belong to the outside world. Now, this is the scheme which you very often have. And if you try to break through this scheme, you will have a huge opposition of those who think you are a shame trying to... because, you see, people in the end are very conservative. I don't speak now from a political point of view, but they like to conserve the way they are used to function. If you come and with a new idea and you break through, you have a greater position. That is why you have to think first, is it necessary to get a strong opposition before you reach your point? I believe very well that yes, and you have to communicate it strongly, because if you do it softly and nicely, nobody will notice and nothing is going to change.
Bad news or good news?
Okay. Okay, let us take some more. I think we do have some questions coming in from the Twitter sphere. So let me introduce Larissa. Larissa, nice to have you with us. Come and have a chat. Larissa and Erica are monitoring what is coming in from the other chapters. So tell us what we've got so far.
Yeah, we have a question to citizenship, and it's why doesn't exist a single European legislation on gender quotas?
Okay, and where does that come from? Which is we know which
Italy.
chapter? From Italy.
Yes.
From one of the, okay.
From Brescia.
Okay. So why don't we have a single quota for the whole? I mean, in the sense we will have for the boards, but they want to know more broadly. More broad. Okay. Any other questions? Bear in mind, don't have to just ask questions. We want to hear your views about the issues we're discussing as well. Let me come round the back here. Here we are. Thank you very much.
Yes, hello. My name is Claudia Schmitz. I'm from EWMD Rhein-Ruhr, Cologne. I'm doing this for 25 years nearly, and my question is, as long as women don't have a vision how economy and business looks like in the future in women's hands, we just take things away from men. And if you are in a win-lose situation, it is normal that you provoke aggression and that they fight for their rights. So my question is, what is the vision we could create, how does the business in the future look like? What is different? Do we copy the hierarchy? Do we go into a network structure? How would women lead? Do we just copy men and are the better ones? Or what is really the women way together with men? We have to find a joint way to do business better. And this is not just who is sitting where, but what does it mean for economy itself? How is it connected to the environment? How do we use our resources? How do we treat education and children and so on? So I think we should much more link it to some ethical content and to make it a win-win situation. I talk to so many men and say, if we are going to lose here, why do we share? You know? Yeah. So, and I think we have to answer this question. We have to go into communication with men. We should invite them. And I have to say, we are the only network which has allowed men to be members, and it's really hard to attract them and to keep them.
But so you need your own vision. You need your alternative, not just to say, can we join your club? Yes. But if you like to create a new club. Other questions or comments, particularly to this, if you say, okay, the legislation will come into force, but what is the next step? And I'm thinking here, for example, of where are these 40% of women going to come from? Where are we going to find them? Do we have lists anywhere of potential board members? How are women going to recommend other women to become board members? Or indeed, how are men going to find good women to promote? Obviously, this is something that networks can help with, but are you concerned about this? I mean, it's not, you can set a number, but who are these magic women who are suddenly going to, I think you said now, Viviane, that the number is 18%. So we've got to find 22% more top women to go on these boards. How are we going to find them? Any thoughts? Yes. Hang on a second. Please.
Thank you. I'm from Italy, and we have an experience in our province. I mean, I'm from Reggio Emilia, and we are putting together a list of women available to cover these positions, because actually we were very low in this matter. And we were told that since there were no women available to do this, they couldn't choose from any list. And so we put up a list in Reggio Emilia with all the women available. The first question that my friends, because I was one of the first sending my curriculum to this list, and all my friends told me that they were not, let's say, competent for covering this position. And I wonder if any man ever said, am I competent to cover this position?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that highlights another problem, and a problem that Viviane Reding also alluded to, which is women won't necessarily put themselves forward for these jobs. So how are we going to get around this? Your list is working. They can't use the excuse.
It's working, but I'm not sure that any one of us will be chosen at the moment.
But it's a start. They can't say there are no candidates because there is a list they can go and look at. Any other experiences like this? Sieglinde.
Yes, there are lists, and there are lots of very well-educated women in the middle management. And it's the question, what are the criteria to come to the top? And just we had in Germany a survey who described which top managers are really leaders and have the qualification we obviously need to have and to fulfill from women. So we do not need superwomen, and I think this is wrong to search for superwomen and to accompany these women to the new jobs that everybody expects from them, things which are impossible to do. We have to bring them down, and we have not only to look to the quota, but we have to look to the qualification, what they are able to do, give them a chance to do the jobs. There are enough people who can do it, men and women as well. Also headhunters, they have to look, and they have to be very, very sensitive and carefully to look for the qualification. So I think there are lots of women we have to come to these jobs.
Thank you. Chris, if I could ask you as well, whatever you want to say, obviously, but also, obviously, networks like this is exactly what you're for. Yes. Do people know enough that you're a resource they can go to find good women?
Yes, absolutely, they are. But another thing I wanted to add to this discussion is the fact that we do have databases. And yesterday, for instance, I was meeting with EWOB, or the president of EWOB, that's European Women on Board, here in Brussels. And we were discussing that those databases that exist, like in Germany, I could name just a few of those. There are women, there are highly qualified women in these databases, but they're not requested. There's no demand for those women. We have courses. The VDU, the German Women's Entrepreneurs Association, was the first organization to put on courses. The women go to courses, sometimes they pay a lot of money to attend those courses, get some kind of certificate or not. And I asked some of them who attended those courses, even though they're high caliber courses, they learned a lot. But then no requests are coming. It's just not happening. And so the question is, why is this? And that was a discussion we put, and we, of course, it is to discuss with the men and to look at that, but there is no final and concrete answer to that, so we do need to work on that. But
okay. Thank you. I'm going to come round to Ursula, and then, Viviane, I'll give you a chance to respond to what you've heard so far.
Thank you. I think I would like to pick upon the topic of there are no requests coming in. Maybe we are just not courageous enough to go beyond our comfort zone regarding kind of stating that here I am and I want this kind of job. I mean, if we keep networking just amongst ourselves or amongst our peers, male or female, I mean, nobody of them is going to give us a job in a non-executive board. We should really go out and talk to the people who can give away these jobs and just state our claim there. We might be turned down now, who cares? We will not be turned down forever.
I'm just thinking, is there a role in all of this for headhunter search agencies going to a headhunter and saying, listen, I don't know whether you've been asked yet to help find women for boards, but can you put me on your list when it comes?
Definitely.
Possible way of doing it. Viviane, can I broaden this as well from this question, where these women will come from? As I understand it, the aim with the legislation, it's not so much the number that matters, but the insistence that companies do things in a different way. And if they're not reaching the number, introducing fairer, more transparent selection procedures. It's about changing the recruitment culture, isn't it? And how do you see this question of the lists, and where do you find the women feeding into that process?
That is actually the basic question. Because I always got as an answer in the beginning when I tried with CEOs and presidents of companies to do the voluntary model. They always said, yes, you're absolutely right, we would like to have the women, but there are no women. No? I mean, no women to fulfill the means. And that is when I asked to the business schools, do you train no women? And the business schools became upset. We said, yes, we do train them. We have plenty of good women in MBAs. So I asked them, yes, but what happens to these women in MBAs? Please give me an analysis. Well, our most famous European business schools came back with the following analysis. The few women who are in MBAs do the best MBAs, and afterwards the non-so-good males are getting the best positions. And that is where the business schools made these networks of board-ready women, women who have gone through business schools, who have management experience, and who are on a searchable database. It has become a world searchable database. Now comes in the problems of the headhunters. Now, headhunters are not used either to finding women. And headhunters actually do not use the databases which are available to them. They have some kind of a resistance, I have seen, towards these databases. Why is it? Is it more rewarding to do it in another way rather than to go to take the candidates which are available? I don't know, but I think we should make these databases known to everybody, because the women are there, the capacities are there, but the old say, oh no, we don't find the suitable women, still goes on. Now, the question of the Italian lady was very important because, and I know where it comes from. Italy has made a quota rule, the quote rose. All right, it is what it is, but is it implemented? And that is a big problem. That is a big problem with all the laws. You can have beautiful laws on paper, but in the real life they are not really implemented. And I know the Italian mentality. That is why Italy turns to Europe and say, please do a quote rose in all of Europe, and Italy will be forced to implement its own law. That is somehow how it works. But I think we have really, by examples, to bring forward the women who are capable to do it, and there is a huge amount of them. Now, by wish and by will, I did not present a European law with strict quotas. You need to have so many women, full stop. I said, no, you have to leave these women into the competition, so that they can be chosen. Today, women even don't enter into the competition, so nobody can choose them. But if they are in the competition, because they are really good, they will have a chance to be chosen. That is the first thing. And then the second thing, which always comes up again, is the self-confidence of women. Now, ladies, there is a difference between males and females. Average males present themselves as geniuses. Geniuses, women present themselves as average. And this is something which networks like yours have really to change, to give the women confidence to present themselves. They are so good. They are really gorgeous. And I still remember a say of a French feminist who once said, we will have equality the moment that average women will come to top positions, because there are very many average men in top positions. And if we start to analyze, and that will be a new culture of how the companies function, if we start to analyze the performance, also at top level, now then we will come to very big surprises, and that might give a chance to qualified women. Personally, I don't want non-qualified women to reach top levels. That is very bad for women. We need the best women to reach the top levels. We have those best women, so let's do everything together to give them a chance. And let's do it together with the men. I know very many CEOs in companies who would like to break through. They have opposition inside their own companies very often. So we must also help the men who wants to help us. And that is something I would plead for.
Thank you. I want to come back on that, how we help them to break through. But before I do that, I understand that I think in Germany, I'll come to you in a minute, I think in Germany there is a problem also with when you find the women and you put them on the boards, sometimes they resign very soon afterwards. No, but do we know why? I mean, the question is why? What is happening that these women break through, and I will come then to get some questions, they break through and then within a year or 2 years they leave. Does anybody have, obviously you're nodding, so it clearly is quite a common experience. Does anybody have an explanation for what is happening here? Because this takes us 1 step forward and then 2 steps back. Is anybody?
I think we have a good question.
Okay, hang on.
Because it's regarding.
Come into the shot so that everyone can see you. Okay.
It's one question about education.
Yes. How can cultural changes be integrated in the school education?
Because we think that there starts it. There's the start for it.
Could you tell me which chapter that came from?
That came from Italy and Switzerland, and
similar questions.
from some other chapters, and we formulated this question. And another question, which I think fits in this part now, is which stereotypes do we have to overcome?
Okay.
Because that's exactly the topic right now.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Hear from you again a little bit later. So that question, if women are underconfident, is it something in our education systems that is still making us not think we're as brilliant as men? What are the stereotypes we're trying to overcome? We'll come back. Let's pick up on that and then perhaps come back on this question of why women resign often from boards, because I think it's interesting to explore what is happening there and whether there's anything networks like yours can do to help address that. But on the education issue, any other thoughts before I come back to Viviane Reding to comment on that? Anybody have is it still something that's embedded in our education systems that women do not emerge as confident as men? Anybody have a thought? Viviane, can you comment on that?
Well, I'm not the kind of woman who knows everything.
That's your role tonight. We've given you an award, now you have to know everything.
The fact is that education systems and teachers sometimes are much more evoluted than the society. But you do not learn only at school. You learn also a lot outside of school. And if in the family, for instance, you are right, our Italian friend says in the family, the stereotypes in the family are very strong. There you have then the revolutionary small girls who want to break out of the stereotypes, and then they become the bad girls, which are then again rejected by society, you see. And well, what I think, speaking about stereotypes, there has been an inquiry made in Italy lately to know what the 15, 16 years old kids, boys and girls, would like to do in life. The boys, they like to become a football star. Well, I think this is very honorable and very normal. And yes, you were right. The velina, that means these undressed girls who present the weather on the television. And I think that's terrible. I think it's also terrible that the Barbie dolls are still around, because those are the perpetrators of stereotypes. And schools sometimes are fighting this, but society around contradicting school, society is stronger than school.
So we need to address the societal issue. Can I get a view? I'd like to get a view from Italy on that, Selene, if I could in a minute, but also from Turkey, bring in another perspective here. Just in terms of this question of is it education, is it societal? Why do you believe women struggle to get the confidence that these young men still emerge with?
Yes, I'm coming from a different country. We have, you know, we are an Islamic country, and we are struggling between Europe and the Middle East. And this is not so easy to fight as a woman in companies, also in the education side. But Turkey is looking much more forward to the European side. But even so, we have a lot of problems in the education, because education is very important for the kids, for the girls. And if a woman became much more power, that is not a welcome from the man's world. It is still also in the school set on that side. So that means we have to fight a little bit more, and we hope to become it more forward in that way.
Thank you. Selene, a thought from you on this question of the societal impulses as well as the educational ones.
I think the family is quite important, because if you are a mother with a wrong model, your daughter learn by you a wrong model. My daughter, for example, is 14, and she knows that she can everything that she wants to do. And she is really proud of me, because I'm really interested in gender equality and stuff like that.
But you've instilled in her a sense that she can be what she wants.
Yes,
and that's
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I remember when she was a really little girl, and she came to home, and she said, a fellow of mine said that I can do that because I'm female. And I said, why? And she said, I don't know. And I said, you can do everything better than a male.
Thank you very much. There was a thought down here. Hang on a second. Please.
Thank you. I want to share another interesting activity of our organization. In 2006, and with the financial help of the European Commission, our organization developed a European Charter on Gender Equality in Local Life, which is a document of 21 articles, really defining activities that can be taken at the local level in order to promote gender equality. And so far, 1,500 cities have signed this charter and are now implementing it. And the biggest number of cities, by the way, is in Italy. But the question is, of course, about the enforcement. So now we are monitoring the implementation. And I think it's very important that the public sector leads by example. And we are very pleased that we have really committed cities who are willing to take actions which are not simple, but really to make a difference and to try also to convince others to take further actions. And so I think that, or I hope that we will get much more cities to sign the charter and to implement it. But again, I think it really needs examples. It needs leading by example to show at the political level, in our case, that it makes a difference and that the private sector hopefully also can make it, can follow.
Thank you. If anyone else has experiences or examples to share with everyone else, that would be very helpful. Yes, please. Sorry, I didn't see you there. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Julian Pochowski. I'm coming from Frankfurt. I'm a headhunter. And I have the experience I can share that women always say, well, if I have the shoe number 40, I prefer 39. And men, 42, 43, 45. I think the reason why headhunters don't go in the fight to promote women is just an economic question. They have to have any month enough projects, so they take the easy way. And the easy way is to put again and to present men.
Right.
From time to time women, but normally men. And today, and especially men, are driven by money. So I think, first of all, we need men on the boat.
To ask for the women.
Yes. And therefore, I think is this in France, where companies have to, they get a reduced fee when they don't have enough women in the board. So I think we have to find a way on the economic side. You know, if it hurts in your pocket,
So
you do something.
Make that business case, and then you will do something, please. And then I'm coming over there.
Yeah, Gudrun Timm. I represent Germany in our international board, and I work professionally with boards in emerging markets. And you were asking for why is it so, and I think if we look now at Germany, we have a long tradition of dysfunctional boards. We have a long tradition, our own success in our economy comes more from the famous German Mittelstand, which might not be brilliant in terms of corporate governance, but very successful in terms of business drive. When it comes to the corporations, though, we have a tradition of supervisory boards that nod and are being managed by management boards. So what is the wonderful board work that so many women are lining up for? Are you being chosen because you have interesting ideas to put? Are you being chosen because you're a financial expert? Or are you being chosen because you just know the business model so much? No, you don't. You get chosen because of your networks, which means high-ranking clients, government, or you're being chosen because you're quiet, but not because you speak up.
And is that why many of them leave? Because they discover, once they get on these boards, that actually they don't women are rather sensible and maybe say, I don't need this. This is wasting my time. I've got better things I could do. Is that possibly one of the explanations for why women resign from boards more often than men?
I'm not in the position to comment. I don't see so many women resign from supervisory, but rather from CEO, C-level positions. Right. So where is the classic situation, they are just getting mobbed.
Yes.
Anyway,
and in the end
they're blocked.
In the end,
but
they're blocked.
the understanding of board work is so different to, let's say, the UK, where a board is meant to strategically guide a company. And there the situation also is different.
Right. Okay. There's one over at the back here, and I was going to try and stay out of the camera's way by standing there and passing it to you that way.
I'm a headhunter too.
They're all coming out of the woodwork.
And I
now.
have a different vision of what happens, because Italy is probably more, very, very different from Germany. The reason why I don't, let's say, place too many women is that because the companies are not asking for them. I mean, they are very clear, and they tell me, well, I have, let's say, 3 employees, and they are all pregnant at the same time, so I can't afford to have another one, so I need a man for this position. Or, well, for the purchases, I need a man because traditionally it has always been a man in my company. And on the other side, I have the different vision of women too, because they are the first to limit themselves. I mean, they have perhaps a husband who travels a lot, and they have children, and she says, well, if I can have a part-time job, it's better for me, because otherwise I can't organize my family, my parents, my whatever. And so I think it's very, I mean, the women themselves are limiting themselves also for any position, even for the positions where a woman also can be accepted.
But when it comes to a company board anyway, it's a part-time post, it's not full-time, so I would have thought them requesting, by the way, and I want to throw a bit of controversy into this discussion. I don't know how many of you noticed this week the debate with Apple and Facebook, who are now the latest company perk, for anyone who hasn't heard about it. They will pay for you to have your eggs frozen. And they say this is because this is something women want to do and they want to attract the best talent. Question, is that a good thing? Or does it simply reinforce the idea that to be a successful career woman, you certainly shouldn't be also thinking about having a family? Go back to what Viviane Reding said earlier about the Scandinavians who managed to go home and spend time with their children. I just want to throw that into the mix because I got quite incensed by it, so I thought I'd share it. Larissa, before I take any more comments from you, do you have some more for us? Yes.
Yes, we have a more general question from Italy and Germany. What economical aspects could steer the job market towards diversity?
Okay, so that driver, the argument that Viviane Reding was talking about earlier, that this is a business issue and this is good for business, that it's not. So how do you see, and perhaps this is a good moment, as you raised it earlier, Viviane, to come back to you, how do you see the crisis, the post-crisis situation? We look at the demography, aging population in Europe. How do you see that, all those economic factors playing in? Is it going to help to make progress on this issue? Do we know what happened to women in the crisis? Have they done better? Have they done worse? How do you see the economic situation affecting what we're discussing?
The economic situation, if it is bad, always affects first the feeble elements of the society, and those are more female than male. The women are the ones who have to cope with the problems normally. Having said that, you raised a very important question, and that is a question: how does this continent, not looking now at Italy or at Germany, but the continent as a whole is an aging continent. If we just want to continue our economic value, our economic development, not growing it even, just continue it without growth, we will run out of talented workers, simply because of demographic changes. So we will have very soon a political question, and that is in some countries a very dramatic political question. Do we leave immigrants from third countries in? You already know the answer. Now, if you do not want this question to be solved at once, then you better get your talented women which exist in Europe, which have been trained in Europe, where a lot of money of the community has gone in. You better give the jobs to them, and you better change your corporate culture a little bit in order to adapt to men and women bringing up a family, because we need men and women bring up a family. We certainly do not need the Facebook model with the eggs. I'm sorry, no. That's not the way the Europeans want to do things. But then we should understand that this means making it possible, like in the Nordic countries, for men and women to be also fathers and mothers, and to carry out this responsibility, and to do it in parallel without having to choose between the one and the other. I have the impression that for the time being, it's only the mothers who are forced into a choice. Oh, there is a very interesting statistics. I love it. You know, we have statistics in Europe about the hours a person works. Young men and young women somehow work the same amount of hours. When young women become mothers, their working time goes down. When young men become fathers, their working time goes up. What does this show to you? Okay, I don't answer the question. Everybody has understood. But it is a statistic reality. Yeah, the escape home in order not to do it. That is why we need really, for the sake of the healthy development of this continent, to think about what chance we're giving to the future young families to work and to raise their children. If we fail in this question, we fail in our politics, we fail as a continent.
And that is the way you have to make the case very clearly to men and women alike. Chris, you wanted to come in here.
Yes, actually, I'm now sort of hesitating which point to raise first, because originally I wanted to come back to the original point I wanted to raise, which is a recent study by the EWMD Rhein-Main member, Professor Astrid Säbel-Habig from the Aschaffenburg University, found that the higher the level of management, it's the discussion we had earlier, why do they drop out? The higher the level of level of management that women occupy, the greater their rate of fluctuation is. And this research, interestingly enough, suggests that top-level sharing and the promotion of internal and external networks would help to reduce this fluctuation. We're talking about A-level. It's different for B-level and C-level women. And another recommendation is to offer part-time career. So that is an interesting finding the study has come up with.
Interesting.
Which I wanted to raise to this.
Personally, I don't believe in a part-time career. Or you do a career or you don't do a career. If you do a career, and that goes the same for men and for women, you have really to be dedicated. But dedicated doesn't mean that you stay in office until 8 or 10 o'clock in the evening. You can, for me, always people who stay as long in the office, I think they cannot organize their working time, really, and be not very efficient. So we have to stop to judge somebody on the long hours he's working or she's working. We have to judge on the efficiency of the work done. And for this, I don't hesitate to say women are very good because they are used to have more functions and push them together. So that will be an advantage where men can learn from women how to be efficient by not losing time.
Ursula, can I come to you on this question of women withdrawing, not just from boards, but more generally, because you were talking earlier about why you think women do it. So say around the age of 40, they've been climbing the career ladder within a big company, and suddenly they go off and start up their own business or change track. Why does that happen, and is there anything that can be done? Is it about, as we're hearing, creating supportive networks so that they don't feel the higher they climb, the more alone they are? Is it about, can this help, this sort of thing? What do you think it's going on there?
Well, actually, you're completely right. What we discussed before, And we also see that in our own networks. If I asked among you, the women who were very successful in a big corporation, and at the age of, let's say, 40 plus minus, they just took a step back and asked themselves, am I crazy to stay on in this environment? And then they left the big organization, and they either founded their own company or they went to a smaller company, simply because the quality of life is better. You can have, outside these big structures, you can have a very successful career, but just not in the big organization. And you can have a life, you can be part of a network, you can do whatever you want. The problem is just, we should not be naive. You do not change structures from the outside. So what we can do is either stay in ourselves and just be a little bit more resilient against the pressure in there. And then when we see somebody in our network who's struggling, well, help her, support her, provide advice and coaching and whatever. Because I think every woman who kind of drops out of the system is one step less towards doing what Claudia said before, creating within the organizations a better vision and a better future for our economic situation in Europe.
Thank you. Thank you. Cornelia, can I come to you on this point? Because we were talking about this while we were eating a little bit. Do you have a thought in terms of what more can be done to support women, to encourage them to go on climbing, not to say, you know what, I'm off, and as you say, have another successful life? And would you agree that if women do that, then we're not going to change, because the change has to come from within companies?
If you have asked me this question 12 months ago, I would definitely say yes, but unfortunately in the meantime I have changed. I don't agree that women only left companies because of having a better life, because I have took the decision after 22 years being extremely successful to leave the company, not for having a better life, because I couldn't stand any more values. Right. So it's a point about values. It's about our current economic systems. We're talking about capitalism. Yeah. And we cannot ask women to stay within the company if they're not able to cope for this.
Which goes back to the point made earlier.
For me, was the most important question in the evening was the new vision.
Yes. That you feel that if the reason you walked away from it was because you couldn't live with the vision that they had, and the answer therefore is you need to present an alternative vision.
This is the only way that we can survive.
Okay, Sieglinde, I think you wanted to come in here. And then I want to raise another point and ask you all some questions.
Yes, what I wanted to say is I heard someone who all know here in this room who is working or was working for years in the HR business and was one of the most important personaler. What he said is, don't waste your time to concentrate on the big concerns, the structures of the very old business from yesterday. If you see, we just spoke and you asked for an explanation, why did that happen, that 5 fabulous, good, excellent women lost their jobs as top women in big German companies. I cannot really explain it because, I must be honest, I'm not close enough to explain it, but I think it's definitely not a question of their qualification, but perhaps it's really a question of what kind of structures do we have. And what this man said, Thomas Sattelberger, I think you know whom it could have been. It was on the congress we had with Astrid Schäbel-Habig when she presented her very interesting study to these points. What he said is, concentrate on smaller companies, concentrate on innovative companies, concentrate on companies who are doing a different work, who look what people want to work, what they are able to do, and then the company has to find out what is the market for their capabilities. And I was surprised when I heard this. There were some guys from the D&I division, they were very astonished and they were very shocked when they heard this, but I think it's worth to think about it, if it's really worth to run against these old structures. What is the strategy to go the right way?
Thank you very much. I just want to raise another point, which is, we talked about helping women to break through. And I want to talk a little bit about mentoring and sponsoring. because there is a growing movement that suggests mentoring is all well and good, getting advice, and most of us can name somebody who in our careers has encouraged us and helped us and acted as a sounding board, but in increasing sense that that's not enough. That the mentoring doesn't actually lead to people climbing the career ladder, and what you need is something much more naked, as it were, much more honest, a sort of, okay, I'm going to sponsor you, and you're going to do things to help me, and I'm going to do things for you. That happens a lot with men, who will suggest each other or choose each other for promotions and then help each other along the way. Women, it seems to me, are more tentative about this. It feels like it might not be quite the right thing to do. It's not as transparent as it should be. So I just wonder, first of all, do you feel that mentoring is enough? Or does it need to be much more active? You know, if a job comes up, I'm not just going to advise you on how to apply for it. I'm going to go to them and tell them you should have it. Do you believe that we need this next step? And if women are a bit hesitant about taking that step and helping each other in the way that men do, is there any way of overcoming that resistance? Any thoughts on this question of mentoring versus sponsoring? How many people in this room feel they have been mentored in their career? Not many. Have any of you felt you have been sponsored in your career? Had somebody who's really... Can I ask how that worked and how effective it's been for you?
Yeah, so my name is Astrid from Düsseldorf, and yes, I mean there is a difference. Women get mentoring, but men get sponsoring, and with sponsoring you make the career. And I have leaders who are sponsoring me and who are putting me in the right positions. It's not like, yeah, we have a nice chit-chat and so on, blah, blah. These are the options, go for it.
And how
I believe you can
them?
make it.
How did you find these sponsors? Or did you don't know?
I think we just found each other. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for anyone who would like to be in your fortunate situation of having somebody who's really pushing for them? Any advice on how to make that work?
Yeah, you just need to trust in yourself and go for it. I mean, it's not like, do I need still one more training or do I need to test this? No, do it.
Yeah.
Try it.
Yeah.
And if you fail, that's a learning.
Okay. Would anybody feel that women are a little bit more hesitant about this, that it sounds, it's not the sort of thing we do really, you know, it's up to everybody to apply for jobs, and if they get them on merit, and if they don't, they don't, and it wouldn't be quite proper to try and do what Astrid is benefiting from now. Anybody have a thought on this relationship? Yes, please. Thank you very much.
I'm Jessica from Switzerland, and I would like to comment on that, so that women don't be so afraid. If they get a new job and they don't know everything, maybe they struggle in the beginning, and that's really a bad situation. But the good thing is, when you're struggling, you see how many people are supporting you, and other people can see when you're struggling. And my own experience was that I had colleagues who were not supporting me and they were really against me, but my CEO recognized it, that that colleagues of mine trying to push me out of the company, and he recognized this, and he took care that I stayed in the company. And so don't be afraid if you are not really 100% able to doing the job. If you're making mistakes, it's not a death of yourself.
And your CEO was smart enough and effectively has, in that sense, become your sponsor. No better sponsor than the CEO of the company, is there? Yes, hang on a second, let me come round to the back here. Please.
My name is Christiane Eckhardt from the Rhine-Main chapter, and I think we are right now on the position to discuss where are the possibilities for alliances for women. There is one idea around at the moment. It was a great speech of Emma Watson, and she talked about an idea or a movement, he for she, and I think that's one of the missing links for us to find strategic alliances and to identify the right persons, especially men in powerful positions, to sponsor sponsor, as Astrid said, the women who want to have a career. Not all men want to have a career, not all women want to have a career, but those who want need the right support. And I think we should really think about where are our alliances? Are these human resource managers? Are these the CEOs who have daughters around about 20 and 25? Or whom can we find really to support the careers of women?
Thank you very much. Please. Thank you.
I think, it's Claudia again, I think we get changes from the society which we don't have in this dualism, man or women. I'm a management trainer, and sometimes I have 24 men sitting in front of me, and if I'm lucky, 1 woman. And I always make very bad jokes about them when I start the seminar. That is my pleasure always. They can't fire me for that. So when I ask them what is going on in the company, what is about diversity, gender stuff, and they all say, you know, it's not the women that frighten us, it is the young men. And I say, what do you mean? I said, you know, we have no women, and they're few, if that even the double wouldn't frighten us. But if every man who is employed and is about 20 to 30 and becomes a father and leaves the company for 2 months, this is frightening us. They change completely our working structure. We don't know what to do. And this is the young man's attitude, the famous gender Y, the whole tendency about family issues, friendship, work-life balance. They are the ones who change. And we need to support these young men to insist on it and help the company to say, okay, now it doesn't happen from the women's side, now it's coming from the other side. And so how do you change now? And I think this is a way we have to look at.
So going back to a question earlier from one of the chapters about stereotypes, the stereotype, oh God, if I employ a woman, she's just going to get pregnant and go off. If the men are doing it, then that stereotype is wiped out.
It's a Swedish way.
Swedish way. Larissa, did you have something you wanted to bring in here?
We have a question from Germany, Rhein-Ruhr. In her for She speech, Emma Watson proposed to involve more men to reach the feministic goals. Is it time already for this approach?
Okay, so beautifully echoing what we said. Viviane Reding, if I can come back to you now, because quite a number of things have come up, and this idea of using men as the vehicle. You said at the end of your speech, it's got to be a joint effort or it won't work. But here we hear, actually I think a really interesting way, which is really focus on them and get them to do the work for us by breaking down the stereotypes, etc. And also a thought on this question of the strategic alliances that was raised. Do you have a thought on that?
Oh yes, I have a whole life on that. And look, when I started in 1975, 6, 7, I was the only woman around, so I could not be mentored by other women. I was always finding male alliances, and that was always take and give, and they always helped me. I would never be in the place I am now if there hadn't been a whole number of men who helped me. Because simply by helping me they had also an advantage. They had the advantage that they helped a young, was about being young at that time, a young female talent, and this gave them a different personality. So it helped them. The mentoring thing is very nice for very young people. But once people start to be adult, it is about alliances, and it is about take and give. You will not have, girls, your whole life somebody taking you by the hand. But you can go hand in hand with somebody to get it done, and I believe that is a solution. We should not go into the trap of being cared for. We have to care for ourselves, and that is why I agree with everybody in this room. The biggest deficiency is that we are doubting about ourselves. And what I always said to the women who were around of me, I pushed them, I didn't mentor them, I pushed them. When I saw a talent, I pushed this talent to the completion. Just do it. Just do it. And even if you do an error, it doesn't matter. Just do it and repeat the error a second time. But do it. And don't sit there and wait somebody is going to come to take you with the hand. You see, that is old fairy tales. The princess being woken up by a kiss. Well, sorry girls, it doesn't work like this.
Oh, don't break my heart. All these years.
No, we have to wake up the prince, and then he will help us to go ahead. But don't wait for the prince to come to wake you up. No, doesn't work.
Okay, any other thoughts on this, on the sponsoring, the mentoring, the man-women forming alliances to work on this together? What I want, before we close this discussion, to talk a little bit about where the broader gender equality agenda should go in the next few years. The broader equality, not just of gender, but of age, different issues. Whether you have any, the Commission is supposed to come out with a new gender strategy to replace the one that you launched, because that runs out in 2015. Whether people have suggestions for where the focus should be in future, more broadly than women in business, just in relation to gender issues more broadly. But anybody, before we do that, want to come in at all? Any other thoughts in terms of how you recruit men to the cause, as it were? Whether by making them do the things that women get accused of, and therefore making it acceptable, I never understand how that works, or by getting them to argue your case. Any other thoughts? By the way, a little aside there, you said earlier something about, women being seen as bossy. Do you know the one that really annoys me? It's when women are described as aggressive, just because they're as assertive as men. I've never heard a man described as aggressive. I don't know why it's an adjective that's only ever applied to women. Okay, let's move to this broader agenda. As we look to the next 5 years, we have a new incoming European Commission, we have a new European Parliament. So at the policy level, and let's take it's interesting, the question from Italy about seeing the EU playing this role in getting member states to live up to what they said they would do. Would anybody like to suggest things you think the Commission should focus on in the next agenda for gender equality, whether it be in relation, we haven't talked much about equal pay tonight, because we've been talking more about getting women up into the top echelons, but where for you would you put the focus? If you were the Commissioner in charge of this dossier, what would you be telling everyone would be your main priority for the next few years? Anybody come in and give me a thought? I'm giving you the chance to set the political agenda in Brussels. Would you focus on this issue still? Or do you think we need to go back to pay, 15 EU directives, and we're still not quite there, which is why we need your equal pay day? Any thoughts on where you would put the focus in the future? Tempt someone into the fray. Yes, okay. I didn't want to pick on you again, because as you said, you can't be the font of all knowledge, but you're...
But no, you see, because we have been discussing on a specific subject, and this is what you call the women, the women on top who simply cannot go to the top because there are the barriers, which is economically and societally speaking very damaging. We have, of course, the question of equal pay. Now, because I am speaking here with intellectuals, things are not as simple as that, because the statistics come from the fact that women work a lot of half time, mostly in some countries like the Netherlands, for instance. So you have a lot of pay differences which are coming from this. I believe that one of the major problems, which is a very big taboo still in our societies, is violence. And this is something I tried to tackle partly also in my capacity as European Minister of Justice, in order to have the mutual recognition of the protection orders when a woman crosses a border. Because the violence against small girls in the families, very often in the families, is huge, and this violence also translates later on if a young girl tries to do their own things is very often stopped by a very strong violence. This is the biggest taboo of our societies. It happens at all society levels, and it is very damaging to the development of any human being. And I think we should really break through and speak openly about it. Most of all of the violence inside in the families where it is worst.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Chris?
Yes, we were all shocked by the study from the EU that came out, I think, a year ago, was it? Because we looked at the study and we would have thought that the Scandinavian countries or Germany would be countries that would be well off in this topic of aggression and violence against women, and the opposite was the case. I mean, the statistics were completely from what we expected. So thank you, Viviane, for bringing up this topic into our discussion. And I would like to briefly go back to Cornelia, who brought in the topic of values, and would like to briefly quote the study I mentioned earlier from these two ladies from Kassel. In this study, they first outlined that the concept of work is different for many women that it is generally in society or in the economy for men, in the sense that for men the concept of work is that work is only considered when you get money for it, whereas for many women work is also care work, whether it's care work for children or care work for elderly people in the family or outside the family, or whether it's non-profit work. And another point I found very interesting in this study was that I always thought that women would do more pro bono work than men, but statistically, actually, men do somewhat more pro bono work, but they do the pro bono work in sports, exactly, and in political parties. And they get money, at least they get their expenses, whereas women do it in, well, women's issues or, I don't know, caretaking matters, and they don't get their expenses paid for. So the topic of money and women, I mean, that's my profession, I consult on money, I do find that women have a different approach to money. So I'm not saying it's a better approach, I'm just saying it's a different approach. And so this leads back to the topic of values that we would have to discuss some more in depth. Not tonight, this would explode our discussion. But to raise this topic.
And also that question of the voluntary sector and the caring sector, and is enough attention paid to it. Any other, before we close, and I want to give Viviane a chance to say a couple of closing words and then Chris to close. But let's take a last few points before we do. As I'm here, I'll grab this one first, then I'll come to you. Please.
Yeah, I think coming from Germany, I see a downside to equality, and that is that we try to make all people equal who are not equally gifted. And a solution to getting women into better jobs, usually in German, is the cheap one. Get your children off to kindergartens and schools so that you don't need to care for them. What I'm saying is it's very hard for couples or people in Germany to get people, help them doing housework, cleaning, cooking, whatever, and have a happy family life on a legal basis. It's simply impossible to find somebody to help you and do it like properly. Yeah, and now even we have the situation of wages at the lower end, they are being lifted, which makes the situation even more complicated. And I think we lose in our economy, we lose so many jobs for people who are not very well qualified. We have too many people who don't find a job, but there's work. There's so much work to be done, but we don't enable them to get those jobs because we are afraid of excellence, we are afraid of saying, well, some people are more gifted than others, and it's also an honorable life to serve.
And that raises the broader question as well of the skills mismatch. And if you address that, then more people of all the different levels could have the skills to do the different jobs that there are. So you address the two issues at once. Please, Christiane.
I think we should go for quota, and for quota for men. There are a lot of jobs which are only done by women. Look at the kindergarten, look at the basic level of schools, look at the nurses, and if we have an equal mixture of men and women in this kind of jobs, then they will be better paid, and then it will be easier to have also quota on other jobs.
Thank you very much indeed. Again, let's reverse the psychology. Any other thoughts, ideas, agenda items for the future? Please.
In addition to this, you will find nearly no men as an assistant, because they are not able, and they wouldn't be accepted.
Very good. I'm going to take... I am tempted to say, do you want to say something? You've sat here smiling beautifully all night, very gracious in the face of such an onslaught on the male of the species. Is there anything you'd like to say in reply? I don't want to make you the spokesman for all men everywhere. But did you want to comment at all on what you've heard, or no? You'd rather... I think that's very wise with this lot. I think, yeah, you'll get shot down. I'm going to go just once more before we close to find out. I think we have a little bit more coming in on Twitter. So, Larissa, a last word from you. Who have we heard from this time?
Yeah, the final question of networking from Rhein-Ruhr chapter. In terms of networking, how many beers did you drink with Angela Merkel?
And I think that definitely, I don't know if there's anyone else who drinks beers with Angela Merkel, but Viviane, have you ever had a beer with Angela Merkel? Or a glass of wine, indeed?
I have had you... once I will write a book. and that will be about how you solve problems, not in an office, but around a beer. And I'm very Luxembourgish, you see. We are always solving problems with a drink, and we find a moment to celebrate and just to feel nice. And you cannot imagine how many political problems I have solved in such a way. And I think it's also a way women can do things much better. Not only to go out to take a beer, but for instance, in my team we celebrate all the time. If there is nothing to celebrate, we find something. And that creates this family feeling in a team, and you can work so much better. People are so much more dedicated, and it's a typical woman thing. So I do believe that if there are more women around, the way we work also changes, and that is positive for the development of our economies. Now, because we got a lot of questions from Germany.
Yes.
Germany is very specific, I would like to tell all the friends from Germany. You have, for instance, one word, one expression, which cannot be translated into any other language in the world, and that is Rabenmutter, raven mother. Now, if you analyze this word and you understand the society. As long as this word exists, you cannot have an equilibrated society.
Can you give us a sense, for those of us who don't speak German, even though it can't be translated,
a raven,
what does it mean?
A raven mother. That means a bad mother. That is a mother who stays not home 24 hours on 24.
And that's a bad thing.
That is a bad, she's a raven, she's bad, she's black, she's not worthy. So you see, but the question which has been underlined on the help work, that will be a future big problem, because with the aging of the population again, we will need a lot of help work. And we should then, in those societies which have not managed to solve the problem, we should look to those societies which have. And where there is a minimum income, and where there are rules, and where there are, for instance, checks where people can pay by checks in order to pay for help, where all the social security questions are solved. There are models we have to analyze and we have to follow, because we will have, with the aging society, a real societal problem, and a problem of values. What is the value of what you do? I don't call it work. It was very interesting, your example, that the voluntary work outside the pay is not a male environment. That's very true. What is the worth of work, of service, of creation? That is a basic question we have to ask ourselves. Who is caring for the old generation? Who is going to care for the children tomorrow? What is the worthlessness of this service to society? Do we want this or not? And how are we organizing this? And this simply cannot be a woman problem. It has to be a society problem. Men and women together in order to decide what kind of society we want to live in. And this society is changing. We are in a globalized society where the pressure from other continents becomes more and more strong. They want to live well, they want to eat well also. Before it was not the case. Now we have, so the growth is not going to be as strong as it was. We were an aging society, whereas the other societies around are young societies. So we have really not only to think on how we integrate women, we have to think about how we integrate human beings for the future. And if we do not find these solutions very quickly, the next generation is going to run into big trouble. So it is our responsibility as a generation who is in charge now to find the solutions on these human questions, which are not only female questions.
I think that is a perfect moment on which to end our debate. Will you join me in thanking and congratulating Viviane Reding again? Thank you so much. Thank you. And now, back to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Jackie. And especially thank you very much, Viviane Reding, for your inspiring words. Also, thank you very much to everybody in this room for your lively contributions. And actually, I have to add one last point before I come to the very closing. The Hamburg chapter, and Heike Frerichs, please maybe get up, because I do want to welcome you. She's the German president, co-president, and I didn't have a chance to welcome you earlier. Thank you very much. They have asked about the social freezing that we did not comment very clearly about, and I just wanted to point out to the Twitter from Viviane Reding's office for the Hamburg chapter as well, where you said that it's not really what we Europeans want. So it's a very clear statement on that. And yes, thank you to all of you who joined us in the public viewing events, the tweets and messages in Italia, in Deutschland, and in Österreich. We've enjoyed this exciting and inspiring evening and discussion. We look forward to the exchanges with you all in the future. So may we all learn from the successes of the past and be inspired to trailblaze the path for our network. Join us, meet, share, engage, and tonight, relax, enjoy the company, and goodbye to everyone.
Chris, as it's your birthday, I think we should drink a toast to all of you and wishing you a very happy birthday, and here's to the next decade. A toast.
Thank you very much. which reminds me to say thank you very much to the team that's been organizing this with me. Astrid Hake, the international officer, bitte. Jacki Davis, once more, the moderator with her lively. Of course, Larissa Schumacher. And Erika Hettisch. She's not only been active tonight, but also throughout the year preparing this event. Erika, it's been a lot of hard work, I know. Thanks again for the good cooperation. And last not least, again, the team, the technicians, Marcel, the programmer, Martin, the head of the team, and Kai, the mixer of the pictures, and our lady behind the camera, which we can't see right now, Tanya. You will see her occasionally on the photos. So thank you very much to the entire team.
And to you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
And goodbye to all of those watching us from all around Europe, and a happy birthday to you as well.